Thank you so much for staying for the Q&A. Um, what kept me going was Alice herself, but also the people surrounding the film, whether it's the donors, the archivists, historians, kind of living through my journey because they wanted Alice's story told. And actually, Cosima, being the co-producer of the film, she walked in as a researcher, but she definitely was sitting by my side and helping me in the editing process before we got accepted to Cannes, and pushing me because it's not a one person job. You don't do it alone. Even though at times I did feel alone, cutting, editing, etc. You have to hear, keep going, you can do it, we're here for you, etc. And that's really what helps you. Because there's many times that I wanted to unplug everything and throw it all away and say, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore.
But I think for Alice, like it was always like, how could it be that someone who's done this, and then you kept finding out more things, and then that, and she's not known, and then that, and all these, the more information that came in, the more, I don't know, I think determined we were to keep going.
Yeah.
See what I mean? You need that constant excitement.
Get a producer like this.
Exactly.
Great.
And you've had a lot of, obviously we saw Jodie popped in earlier to, to do the intro. You've had a lot of big supporters on this. How did that happen? Did did some people find out your project and support snowballed, or was that also quite a long process of years of getting people interested and wanting to be a part of this and
Yes.
be interviewed?
It's a very good question. When you start something, you have to be extremely passionate and excited, and you share it with people, but it doesn't mean that they're going to write you checks. So I personally started writing my own checks, and then I didn't have any more money. So I did a Kickstarter campaign. Are there any Kickstarter? Yay!
Oh,
Three-
excellent.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
Thank you. 3,840 donors, which is kind of unusual for this kind of project. That got a lot of publicity. Robert Redford was somebody that I worked with, and on his movies, because my day job is I work on other people's movies, doing motion graphics, editorial, etc. He was the first person to come on board to move this project forward, and Jodie Foster was somebody that we had contact to narrate, but we got executive producer and a filmmaker that can help us along the way. But Gina Davis's Institute CEO, Madeline Donono, saw the Kickstarter, and then she told a bunch of people. And that became Geraldine Dreyfus, who's worked on many films, including The Biggest Little Farm, The Great Hack, that's nominated. She brought Regina Scully, Jamie Wolfe, and then through the USC Film Archives, we contacted Hugh Hefner, and he came along. He's one of our largest donors, actually. So it just snowballed, but it took time. It took time as the material was being uncovered. It took time for the fundraising to happen. It's not a linear thing. You have to have a lot of pots going. I always compare it to being in the back of the kitchen. You got to keep it all moving, and nonstop.
You touched upon, the materials and finding materials, and I understand that as well as, sort of putting this documentary together and telling this story, you've been very instrumental in sort of getting Alice Guy-Blaché's work saved, restored, back out there. Can you talk a bit more about that sort of process, and does that feel like a side project, and will that ever be over?
It's never over. We're on a break right now. It's our friend's reference. But basically, I do want to say that there were a lot of people that have done work before me in the archives. Those are the true heroes for her films. BFI is one of them. There's 62 archives around the world, multiple languages, multiple films, multiple formats. It's daunting just on that alone. Then you want to find new photos, new pictures, etc., because things about Alice Guy-Blaché had been done before, but I didn't want to repeat the same material. I wanted to find new things. So that takes even more work. So it's taking what exists, going after the new, calling people. I used to prank call when I was a kid, so I had my practice. I love prank calling. I don't do it anymore, don't worry. But, you know, you have to go through all these things and think outside of the box if you want to find new material. The poster that's outside was on, well, Cosima can tell you about that one because it's this photo.
Yeah, so it was like a week before Cannes, I think.
A week before we got accepted to Cannes,
Yeah.
we contacted
The
an
Société
archive.
de Photographie, and they were sending us photos for some other part of the film. And then one day they write to us and they say, hey, we found these glass slides of behind the scenes of the life of Christ. Do you want to see these? So we immediately said, of course, send them to us.
But they wanted to charge a lot of money, 700 euros just to look at them low res. So what do you do in that situation when you're already asking all your producers to give you money because you got accepted to Cannes? And that's the power of, you know, being able to pick up the phone to a woman named Jamie Wolf and say, Jamie, they want 700 euros. Do it now. I mean, wow, you know, and then we got the photos, and I
now we have the
remember seeing,
proof.
but remember seeing the back of her head. She said, "We got the photos. I don't know if it's ours. You have to double check." And the whole Life of Christ section in the film now, those are all photos that have never been seen before, that have been sitting in the archive since 1906. So that's pretty amazing.
It is, and thank you so much for persevering with this labor of love and making it happen.
Well, I only made one, and that's enough. It was her. I had seen a segment called Real Models about women pioneers in cinema, and Shirley MacLaine spoke about her. And it wasn't that she made the first narrative. That's a trivia thing, but it's a big deal, one of the first narratives. It's that she wrote, directed, or produced 1,000 films with a 22-year career, built her own studio, and I didn't grow up learning about women in film. I didn't go to film school, but I never heard of, like, women in film so early, and my whole office was predominantly male at the time when I discovered her, and everybody that I was working with were mostly male directors, very few women. So it blew my mind, and I saw her face, and I said, okay, I'm going to do this for you. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do something. And it turned into this. Well, the Gaumont DVD is available on Amazon, and there's our U.S. distributor has some as well, and there's a Women Pioneers DVD. It's not that they need to necessarily be restored. It's first they need to be digitized, possibly restored, preserved, which we've done a lot of that, but then they need music. They can't just go on there empty. And back in the day, there was piano accompaniment, so it needs to be put in the format that's available for streaming, and, you know, let's get some great composers, and that's the next step, actually, fundraising for that part.
Yeah, the cost, I mean.
It's very expensive. So we'll be setting the fundraiser up, and we already, since I'm a detective, I have all of your emails. I hacked into the BFI. I will be bugging you. Basically, when I started, there was a film before this called The Lost Garden that was made in the 90s, and they had some of the two Alices on camera. So I found the source. One was in France, and the other one that you're talking about was in Belgium. What happened was Victor Bashi was her neighbor, so once he realized who she was, he's a historian, he told everybody, which was fantastic. But also the head of the Belgian archive, his name was Jacques Ledoux, and when he found out, he sent a camera crew to interview her because he realized that it was important. So they followed her all the way to the airport. And thank God they filmed it. So that's how that went down. Well, she loved the theater, so she would try to find different people to put in the films, but sometimes they were probably friends that she knew that she would put in films at first. I mean, when you're an indie filmmaker, I know my first short film, I'm like, "Pff, hey, can you come and do this for me? Do you mind? You know, I met a Russian guy that was perfect for this part, who was my neighbor. I put him in there. You start out small because, you know, you can't afford it, and then you expand as you grow. I was really confident and annoying at the beginning because I was so excited, and I read her memoirs, which are available on Amazon, and I just felt that there had to be somebody out there, just like when we watch YouTube, we see the cat playing the piano, and I have no idea who made that, but it's something that I know. So you can't make all those films that are being distributed all over the world and not influence somebody. That was my hope. It was my dream come true. I never thought that the father, Sergei Eisenstein, by the way, is the father of montage. So it's kind of a big deal in the industry, especially among males. Whoa, father of montage? You know, Alice? So when we found out about that in Hitchcock, we were super excited because we knew it would make a dent among the cinephiles, but also in Hollywood and the masses, because maybe Eisenstein is not that recognizable, but Hitchcock definitely was. So, yes. Very exciting. I think from her mom, because her mom was already helping her father in the bookstore, and she wasn't at home as much. She was raised by a governess, so to watch her mom run the business with the father, and it's not that the women weren't doing that. We just don't know about it, because the more I research and the more stories and the more people I talk to, there were a lot of strong women out there doing a lot of things. They're just not documented or recorded. But it must have been a little bit lonely for her having to be a boss and deal with all of that. You agree?
Yeah. Well, I think also having to step up when her father and her brother died and her other sisters married, she had to be the earner. So I think that also probably meant that she became quite independent. And
Responsibilities make you a survivor and somebody who's got to go out there and do it.